people are gonna say that on Facebook.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Instructional Subcommittee meeting for the Fall River School Committee for Monday, January 25th. To order, Madam Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Idell?
Here.
Mr. Costa?
Here.
Mr. Corey?
Would you all please join me for a salute to our flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In keeping with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20E, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Next topic for today's meeting is citizens' input. We did have one submission by Mr. Colin Dias from 560 Ray Street. Unfortunately, in keeping with the public comment at school committee policy BEDH, the chair has ruled that that commentary is out of order based on number 4, improper comments, remarks will not be allowed. Defamatory, abusive remarks are always out of order. If the speaker persists in improper conduct or remarks, the chairperson may terminate the individual's privilege of address. And also, under number 5, speakers may offer objective criticisms or concerns regarding school operations or programs, but in public session, the committee will not hear personal complaints of school personnel nor against any member of the school community. Administrative channels are the proper means for disposition of legitimate complaints involving staff members. The first order for discussion on today's agenda is a discussion and vote to refer Durfee Program of Studies. I'd like to open it up for brief presentations and discussion. This time I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Maria Ponce to walk us through some of it. I know we're joined by Principal Damaris and some of his staff, department heads from Durfee. Welcome all. I see you all. I see some of you on the screen there. Ms. Francisco, welcome. Mr. McCarthy, Mr. Vidaris, Mr. Seiko, Ms. Morgan, Ms. Monaco, Mr. Costa, Ms. Saunders, and Ms. Souza. Welcome. Welcome to all of you. Ms. Ponce?
Good afternoon. So this afternoon, we have the Durfee team. I would like to recognize them for their diligent work in revising their program of studies, really going through the program of studies with a fine-tooth comb and streamlining it, creating a program of studies that was inclusive and really well thought out, thinking of all the students that they serve and how they can create coursework that addresses all the needs of our students. So I'm really going to turn it over to the Durfee team, but they have done an outstanding job in creating this new document that really is much more user-friendly, I would say, and much more inclusive. So, Mr. Damaris and Durfee team, how about it?
Welcome, Mr. Damaris.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Happy to be here, and I thank my team for being here. If we get down to some department-specific questions, they're on call for us. The program of studies is always a living document, and year to year it changes. The changes that you see in front of you this year are more formatic, right, if that's the right word, right, in that we had a very large, cumbersome document that didn't read as if it had one voice, that had a lot of extra stuff in there that was maybe more appropriate for the student handbook. And so when we looked at other examples of programs of study, we took those into consult, and I think we produced a document that's very user-friendly. So what we did at the start is we kind of tore down the document itself and created a database of all our courses, and Shana Morgan was the driving force behind that work. So now we have a database of every course at Durfee High School that we can manipulate and present in a variety of formats. Then I asked the department heads and the deans to look at their course descriptions and to take out a lot of the language that was really unnecessary in there, like in a course of studies program, you write this course is, well, that's kind of redundant. So let's have it be accessible, and let's have it be user-friendly. And let's have it read as if it has one voice. And I think we came pretty close to achieving that if we haven't. Certainly, you know, with a revamp of a document of this size, there's an opportunity for some mistakes to be made, and we've edited and we've gone back over, but we appreciate any feedback in that way too, in case we miss something. When we look at changes, that we proposed some changes last year that we weren't necessarily able to execute this year because of the conditions. So those remain in the program of studies, and we hope that everything is at a spot for next year where we can bring those into play. And then on the executive summary itself, we're sharing with you some organizing principles. You know, the consistency and clarity of the document so that it reads as one document, right? And a focus on student achievement and accountability, in that when we look at how we're judged by the state, right, we want to build into our program of studies the supports and the development of programs that support movement towards, you know, a school that's not going to be considered underperforming. So when you look at enhancements for ESL services, and you look at opportunities for students of all walks of life to access upper level coursework, we've built pathways into the program of studies that will get the kids there. In addition to that, we're shifting our focus to be fully inclusive, right? We need to be a fully inclusive school. We always need to be prepared for when students struggle and don't do well as throughout and then as a final outcome. But I felt as though we were planning for failure too often by including courses like credit recovery in the program of studies. There'll always be a need for students to recover credit, but we need to push the thinking in the community within the school walls to intervening in real time to prevent more failures, to give the kids the skills and the confidence they need to pass courses the first time around. So we're always going to have flexibility to put kids in courses when things fall apart, okay? But on the front end of it, we're planning that every kid's going to succeed. And we're going to build in the necessary structures by way of intervention. We're expanding our early college and CTE programming, and I think that, you know, hits a variety of learners, right? In that we're boosting up our programs with BCC and BSU, so that right now I think we have between 80 and 100 kids involved this year, and we're looking to push that further. When we're talking about CTE programming, we're always looking to increase enrollment there, but now that we have an opportunity to develop an after dark program, we see that we not only may be able to hook some kids back into school, but also provide opportunities for students where the CTE stuff couldn't fit within their day schedule. And then expanding a curriculum that reflects the diversity of our student body and one that personalizes learning. So when we're looking at some new courses, you want to highlight global citizenship. We have the capacity to introduce Arabic as a world language. African American Studies is a new course coming online, Latino Studies, music from around the world, LGBTQ Studies, Spanish Cultural Acquisition, and AP Human Geography. In its pilot year in particular, that course, we're finding that there's some interest. Actually, this is the second year. We had some really good success on the first year of the course. And when we look at Project Red and Black and that personalization piece, now this year is a little different, and I don't have any of the transformative stories that I could have shared from last year's crop. Okay, it's a little different this year, right? But that project we're committed to because it was building, where it went from a pilot to by year 3, there were 100 kids in the program and more asking for it this year. Couldn't quite deliver it, okay? But we're gonna keep pushing that forward. As you know, as we build towards some kind of requirement of a senior project or a service requirement for all students, I see this as the hub for that. And you know, the steps that are being made at the middle level with with a Generation Citizen, I think the idea of civics and serving one's community is gonna be deeply embedded into the floor of our public schools, and soon will be the time for us to add that kind of capstone piece to it. So beyond that, there would be very specific adjustments within the executive summary by department that certainly we could open up questions on that. But generally speaking, I am proud of this document. I'm proud of the work that my team did because it was a collaborative team effort on all fronts.
Thank you, Mr. Damaris. I think what I would do, and I don't want to put any one of your department heads on the spot, you know, looking up there, I know all the faces, most of the faces, if not all of them, so certainly all capable and competent to discuss what's going on in their departments, but I would give an opportunity if any of them would like to just highlight some of the course selections that are going to be offered this year that may not have been offered in previous years, and what the thought process was behind including them. Or if there's anything else you want to share with the subcommittee about your respective departments, I would certainly offer them an opportunity to do that, and then we'll open it up to questions from my colleagues here and proceed in that fashion.
Okay, so, deans, directors, department heads, those of you that have new courses, if you look at the executive summary, if we go in the order there and make it a little bit streamlined, so if we start at ELA, Dean Vanaco.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for having us.
Likewise.
On behalf of the English department, I just want to echo what Principal Damaris opened with and say that we're very excited to offer a streamlined document to you. Truly, for ELA, there aren't many changes. The big one to highlight is that we're adding pre-AP 2 to our offerings next year. We're excited about that. Pre-AP 1 seems to be off to a great success so far, so we're happy to bring on its counterpart next year. In that lane, or with that thinking in mind, we're trying to always grow our AP sections and make sure that we're including more and more students every year. And so we're happy to also see AP Seminar, AP Lang, AP Lit, and our dual enrollment class as well. We decided to delete the literary seminar at this time because we feel like with the addition of the wing block, we will be able to support our students' needs better through that model. I don't know if I should add anything, Principal Damaris, but that I think is all set for ELA.
I think you covered it, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Want to move right along, math and computer science? I believe that's Mr. Sekel.
That's me. Just a couple of things that we changed for the Algebra 1 on. We're going to change that to the pre-AP. I guess that was in the plan all along, but I had talked to Jeff and I talked to Jen about how that was going in their department, and they said it was going well. So then I talked to the AP people and the college board, and I'm going to meet up with them so I can learn more about the pre-AP. But it just seemed like the right way to go as the school was moving that way for us to move in the same direction in the math department. And another change we made was that we actually we took out the AP Computer Science Principles class, and we are going to go with the Project Lead the Way Computer Science Principles class, and we did that for two reasons. One, we felt like we were going to have students competing between these two classes. They really do the same thing. And so we would end up in two classes that weren't full, and it would be the same kids competing. So then I called Project Lead the Way to clarify some things, and any kid can take this class, and if the kid decides they want to take the AP exam, this class set them up. It was redesigned last year to set them up to take the AP exam. And the syllabus for it, we uploaded, so it's a nice class that you can have kids in it who want honors credit, you can have kids in it who want AP credit, but they're all living the same Project Lead the Way class. And I think the second reason I wanted to do that was because I think our kids are coming up from elementary and middle and with an understanding of what Project Lead the Way is, and I think the pathway will just lead them right into our Project Lead the Way classes here at the high school, which will now lead them into a Project Lead the Way class that will also give them AP credit. So I thought the thread there of coming up was the best way for us to go, but there'll be a comfort level for the kids taking that class. And the last thing we did, Mr. Damaris already talked about it, we looked at some of the classes being offered and thought we had the word review built into them. And my philosophy was the same as his. We just need to do a better job while the kids are in class the first time. And we need to work on interventions happening in class, and with our schedule having a wing block, there's opportunity for us to catch the kids a lot sooner, so we don't need review classes, and we can just have more classes that kids can take the first time around the pass. That's about my little spiel for that.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you, Mr. Sakel. We're gonna go through the whole department and then.
In the one.
Yeah.
okay.
I just gotta share some good news when we're on math here for a second. Today I learned from the College Board that we were awarded the Female Diversity Award for achieving high female representation in both AP Computer Science A and AP Computer Science Principals. And we were one of 56 schools in the country to receive that today.
Outstanding. Congratulations.
Very good.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
I believe we have science next, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that Mrs. Saunders?
Mhm.
Good afternoon.
You,
You're muted.
yeah, she had some dental work today, so
Okay.
it's gonna be tough.
Good afternoon, yes. Bear with me, I had a tooth extracted this afternoon, so
Say
I'm
no
gonna do
more.
my best.
Say no more, Mrs. Saunders, say no more. We have it before us. Just hang tight. I appreciate.
I do just want to share two big things that I'm proud of. We have pre-AP biology for freshmen, incoming freshmen, and just most recently, we've also adopted pre-AP chemistry for our upperclassmen.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. We appreciate you toughing it out with us. Next one is social studies, Mr. Costa. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon, everyone. I'm excited about a lot of the work that's being done in our department. There's been a lot of definitely topical issues and real-world things that are going on in our country today that ongoing conversations in our classrooms, and there's a lot of innovative and progressive lessons that teachers are doing, and they're having really great conversations, around what's going on in the world and looking at the civic lens. So this is, we piloted our civics project last year. We also partnered with Generation Citizen, and they have worked with us this year. We're looking at pulling in our financial literacy component with our civic component in our senior history course. So it's a very applicable and practical course for our seniors that culminates in the civics project, looking at how students kind of make their footprint in our society. So we're continuing to work with that, and I'm really happy with the progress that's going on with that. Two new additions next year. We're adding pre-AP to our freshman world to link up with everyone else's approach, and going along with what Mr. Sagal said, talking to Ms. Saunders and Ms. Bonaco about their early implementation of it. It sounds like it's very positive to put those materials together and have some cohesiveness across the freshman world. We're also adding African American studies. We're looking to celebrate a lot of the great Black history that happens in our country, and also add a civic service learning component to that as well. So we're really excited about that. That was long overdue, and we're excited to add that to our program of studies. As far as the deletions go, Damaris has talked about the credit recoveries. We're taking those away, hoping to build in more embedded for classes. So took away some very removal electives to make it a little more apt for the world that we're living in right now. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Multilingual learners, and I'm gonna botch this, but I'm gonna say Mrs. Souza? Is that correct? Is that her department?
World
Mr.
language.
McCarthy.
She's world language? Mr. McCarthy?
Oh, boy. Yep, here's the Mickey Mouse thing going.
Mr. McCarthy, I think you're muted. While you're doing that, Mr. McCarthy, we'll move on. We'll go to fine arts. Mrs. Francisco, please.
Sure, we only have one course, and it's music around the world.
Arabic.
It's a feedback on your end, but it's a
What she said.
course elective that really brings together cultural music that we haven't really been able to get into at an elective level before. So it's for any student that wishes to take the course. It would check off the box in terms of the requirement for an arts elective for graduation requirements, and we really great curriculum map together that takes kids around the world to look at different types of music, whether woodwind, brass, percussion, or vocal. Very cool stuff. And we're piloting it with kids right now, kind of getting a feel for how it's working with kids.
Thank you. Let's see. How we doing with audio, Mr. McCarthy?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Welcome.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I just did the update the input. Anyway, as I was about to say, we're finally a standalone department this year. We spun out from world language and use it for leadership prior to. And we'll learn from these services. 460 SL students at Durfee High School. And as far as adding new classes this year, any new classes per se, however, I met with our head of guidance, Mr. Woodward, and we are going to be looking at offering increasing seat time for our lower level students. So we're looking at covering up the schedule in order to get the more time in classroom learning English for the lower level ESL Tier B students. The current ESL Tier A students already have a double block out of their day doing ESL class, and we wanted to continue that offering for the Tier B students for the following year. So we're excited about that.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. We got health and cadet.
Me.
How are you?
Good.
Welcome. Come on.
Thank you. For our department, we have 2 additions that we have added, and of course in health and phys ed, we're always looking for ways to connect with students, find things that interest them, that make them want to be moving and make them want to make that part of their life. So last year we had brought in the Walking for Fitness, and in doing that and having conversation with Mr. Woodward, we had talked about basketball. Basketball is extremely popular with our students, and so we decided to offer it as a full course. So we're offering that where they can learn about basketball, the rules, also how to play, but also at the end to be able to put their skills in play and then be able to have tournament type style. You know, we've always trying to see what is it that's going to get kids to move and to be healthy. So another piece of that is we want to highlight that beautiful, you know, field house and that pool that we have. So in doing that, we're going to offer what has actually was in the past, we're bringing it back, which is aquatic sports and activities. So we're going to have in the pool, but we're going to be playing team sports in the pool and a few that might be out, but mainly in the pool itself. And we have a beautiful facility, and we want to make sure that we get all the kids, you know, up and moving. And we call this our reset year, because now we're going into this new building and it's a whole new ball game. So we're sitting down and we're going over everything from there's no food, everything has to be set up and ready to go. So a lot of work there. I will say in the health department, we have also, it's not new courses, but we're amending some of our offerings within our courses. We want to make sure that we are doing more with diversity and also addressing sexual orientation with LGBTQ.
Excellent. Thank you. CTE, Mr. Medeiros, welcome.
Sounds exciting.
Good afternoon. As far as CTE, there are no major changes in the program studies. What we did do was to try to delineate for our 9 pathways internships that students might have an opportunity to partake in. So whereas before it might have said CTE internship, now it may say culinary internship. And a lot of times those externships are opportunities that pop up. We work under the school to career umbrella, and it's kind of like co-op kind of jerky style. Whereas we don't have that full block of a day or a week to do the internships, but we try to fit it within their schedules, 3 periods in the morning. Construction, there's a student who will be going out for 3 periods in the afternoon, possibly to work for the city of Fall River. So that will look differently on his transcript when we go forward with this, and something he can take with him forever.
Thank you, Mr. Medeiros. I'm not taking this lead, Mr. Damaris. Early college,
Sure, I can jump in on that. It's a project I'm very passionate about. We've been piloting for several years here in Fall River, but we were excited to be announced by DESE and the Board of Higher Ed as two of the 6 certified new early college programs this past June, which means we're fully launched. Right now, we launched our first full early college pathway with the juniors. We have about 65 juniors enrolled. Our goal is to grow to between 80 and 100. And really the goal of the early college program is to really serve all of our students with a focus on some of the underserved populations enrolling and graduating from college. And also some of the students who might not be academically at the top at the time that we enroll them in early college pathways. So we build in a lot of concurrent academic support, both in the sophomore year before they start taking dual enrollment courses, and also concurrently 2 days a week while they're enrolled in dual enrollment courses, both with Bristol and with Bridgewater State University. We have 4 career-aligned pathways: health science, business, education, and social service leadership, a pathway designed for students interested in giving back to the Fall River and surrounding communities.
Excellent, thank you. I
Mr.
don't want to
Chair.
leave you all this, Susan, and I apologize for botching your department earlier, but I want to give you an opportunity to share as well if you'd like.
There are no new changes to world language.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we are excited about getting Arabic going for next year, so that's gonna be awesome. If we could just entertain one more statement from Mrs. Morgan. I just want to have her
Absolutely.
kind of summarize and just add some things in terms of the whole vision here.
Yep,
Thank you.
absolutely. Welcome, Ms. Morgan.
Can't hear her. Can't hear her.
Oh, okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I just wanted to say, I think, just how Chris has been working on this project. I think we really put together the unified vision of everything has made us take a step back and think of everything we need to be for our students to be successful. The idea of inclusion, high expectations, all, and really letting that in our program studies. So I feel like we're really good from here, and I'm really excited that I think there's an amazing team that this is going to work out.
Thank you.
We gotta get a new computer.
So at this time, I'll open up to my colleagues. Do you got any questions, or Mr. Corey?
Some questions, some comments, Mr. Chair. I want to let everybody know I wore my Durfee colors today, so in honor of your presentation. Having spent so much of my career at Durfee High School, I'm well in tune with the program of studies. And the one thing that I'm impressed with is the team that put this program of studies together this year is a team of Shana Morgan and Matt Damaris that have been at the helm for a real steady, long time. And they've had a chance to evaluate the entire school, department by department. And the fact that both of you served as department heads, you have a great inside look as to what your department heads are going to need moving into the future. I'm really, really pleased to hear as you developed this program of studies that you did so with the unified vision of growing the entire school. And it's an awesome looking program of studies. And I know that as far as MCAS is concerned, some of the grades have been low. The school is in that 4th quadrant that we have to stay at risk with. But I have to say nothing but the best Durfee pride is shown through this wonderful program of studies, especially when it reflects what's going on multiculturally around the world. I'm very pleased to know that Arabic is a new inclusion in the studies program. And last week I had long discussions with Mr. Costa on the telephone about what's been going on in our country. I was concerned at how the social studies department was looking at that, and he assured me that there's a great amount of discussion going on in classrooms for the good of our country moving forward, because kids need to have a vision as to what in the United States of America looks like in the 21st century, so that they could be healthy, active participants in our society moving forward. I'm very pleased with this. If you guys have any questions or needs for supports moving forward, I encourage you to go through Matt, write to us, we'll do anything we can to help support you. Congratulations on a great program of studies. I yield, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Corey. Mr. Aguirre?
So I have just a couple of questions. The theme throughout was the pre-AP taking over for honors. And I can see what it says clearly here about not being an advanced course, but what is the difference in the cost, between those two?
Okay, the difference would be skill set. Skill set for success in AP coursework tethered to success in college. So the curriculum, there won't be much change other than an insertion of skill development to be ready to succeed at the AP level.
So anybody that would have been normally in an honors would naturally, it's a natural progression and we're gonna get credit for it, more so than what it
Yes.
was.
Yes.
That's what I thought of, but
Yes.
it's not necessarily getting rid of anything, it's just changing the name basically.
Changing the name and enhancing the course by really getting them ready for the AP level.
Right, thank you. I had just a couple of questions, it's a good presentation. The after dark, somewhere it said in here,
Mm-hmm.
and that was, I think, at one of our meetings, that's not up and running yet, or is it? I think we talked about it at the subcommittee meeting, but is it COVID, like, for the?
Yeah, we're looking, that's a good question, and that's another program that I'm really passionate about, the CTE After Dark. We are in our implementation phase for the Durfee RPA partnership for CTE After Dark, and we're planning to launch once we shift back to full hybrid in March. Mr. Medeiros has been interviewing cosmetology and construction candidates, so we're almost locked down with the staffing, and RPA has done a good job doing the recruitment, identifying students who are interested. So next we'll go into kind of an orientation, kind of getting students ready for the After Dark program, because it is a commitment, especially in cosmetology. They need to get that 1,000 hours in order to sit for the exam. Which would take 2 years of a commitment, and then we're hoping to launch right in March, shortly after March 1st as we return.
It sounded like a good program, but I figured with what we're going through is gonna affect that. Along the same lines, at early college, it said 80 to 100 students per grade. Is that the older grades? Like, when it says per grade, it's 11 and 12, not, like ninth grade is not necessarily gonna be in? Was there other classes or?
Sure, it's another good question. We're enrolling students in 10th grade. They won't be taking any college courses, but they will be in the early college program. We're hoping next year to have them go through a college and career 2 elective course to build in some of the academic readiness skills, and also work with them kind of intently on career exploration and build in some potential immersion experience during the 10th grade year, so that once they're in 11th grade and they're taking college courses, they're familiar with platforms and the colleges themselves, and have the skills to be successful. So you're right, about 80 to 100 students in 11th and 12th grade taking college courses, with the 10th grade year being more of a readiness year.
And is that do we prohibit, a really high functioning younger student if they wanted to take a college course and it's available? Is that an option, or is that prohibited?
No, it is an option.
Depends on where they're at.
Sure, accurate place to score, gains you entry into it. If it's a freshman and they're striving, we're going to support it.
Yeah. So we're offering dual enrollment opportunities within the early college program and also outside of the early college program. This year, we've purchased a couple courses through a CDEP grant that Bristol Community College was able to get, sociology and humanities for the spring. The CTE Perkins is also funding 7 or 8 dual enrollment courses, and our partners at TRIO with Bristol Community Colleges are also funding a sign language dual enrollment course. So there's various options for students at different academic levels and readiness to take dual enrollment courses.
Yeah, no, it seems really good. I had a question that I wrote in English and I waited till the end. So we're moving from the honors to the pre-AP,
Mm-hmm.
but have there been assessments in each department to see like how things are going? Are we making strides there with the assessments by each of the subjects? So I know we're changing for the reasons we talked about, but where are we at currently versus, let's say, the prior years? Are our scores, are our individual assessments getting better? Are they getting worse? Are they?
Well, last year was year 1 for pre-AP ELA. 1 and biology. So those students potentially entered AP courses this year, or they may be sitting in a second sequence. Typically, if you're taking a pre-AP ELA 1, for example, you're most likely going to be in AP seminar your sophomore year. So the question you're asking, I'll be able to answer after this year's
I was
results come
meaning
through.
in general, the whole English scores, each department. So as we were going through, just as a state of, obviously there was no MCAS, but we have internal assessments.
Sure.
What do those look like as far as, are we moving in the right direction?
We've seen, if we, like internally right now, we have ANET, right? So we have some ANET benchmarks, and both in ELA and math, I'm seeing increase. Some places it's a modest increase, and some places it's a little more. Because when you break out the ANET assessments, you're looking at particular standards that are tethered to, you know, like layers of learning. So we are seeing positive movement there. When we talk about our AP scores, you know, at the end of the chain for kids, we're continuing to see growth, particularly when you look at AP Seminar and AP Research. Those are two very, very strong early forays into the program, let's say, where we're besting the national average. And actually, I think it was last year that folks, the superintendent and others came down from Worcester to hear from our AP seminars as to what it is we're doing to have a success rate north of 80% on the test. So they were tapping into that, and I think they listened to the advice. So what I'm going to see is that over time we're going to have more students in AP classes sooner. Now, when we look at outcomes for students, you know, kids from Fall River are in competition with the world when they apply to colleges, right? And the more successful AP courses they have on their academic resume translates to a better chance at getting into these competitive schools. Historically, right now, and it's something we have to work on, our SAT scores kind of lag behind the average, but our AP results for kids are competitive, right? Going through the process of college application right now with my student at home, sitting in seminars and admission seminars. You know, they're giving us concrete examples of profiles of students that are being admitted into competitive programs and showing their resumes and calling them very strong. And I'm looking at them and saying, our kids' resumes are stronger because they're taking more AP courses than your typical districts. And not just taking them, but succeeding on the test. So I think that this is something, not only we have to figure out the issue with SAT in general for us, although who knows what's going to happen there because things are changing. But for the AP program itself, it does tie straight to predicting success in college, and it's money in the kid's pocket if they pass the test and the school they're going to accepts it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, everything you're saying. Just, I think we've been behind because of the COVID and not having data to present, but I know you guys have data. You guys are looking at things to see if things are progressing in a positive fashion or a negative fashion.
Mm-hmm.
All I'm asking is that we share some of that with us,
Okay.
because I'm curious to see where we're going. You know, having been identified as an underperforming school, I think things are going in the right direction, but the data will kind of either tell us yes, no, or we need to do something drastically different.
Absolutely, we need the results, right? We can say it feels
That's what
good,
I'm saying,
feels
and I know
things
we
feel
don't have
better.
MCAS, but I'm just suggesting that if we get something that, I'd be curious for it. My last comment is about the credit recovery.
Mm-hmm.
I know from being here a couple of years ago that we were adding the credit recovery so that we don't have students that are falling way behind and needing to automatically go to the alternative school, trying to keep them in the main school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you said that you're gonna try to build those supports within the classes, but what would happen if it doesn't? Like, are we, by not having those options, are we now eliminating, are we gonna be sending more kids to the alternative school automatically by that? Or not?
I don't think so. I think that we'll always have a need and an opportunity for students for, you know, let's kind of go through the continuum. Students struggling in class, the data tells the teacher to intervene in these specific places, and hopefully the right moves has the kid be successful. Now, when the student doesn't do well on a unit of study, I want to get in there and fix it. And so the idea about recovering units in closer to real time rather than waiting for summer school or some kind of credit recovery. Saying that and knowing that the reality is at some point students will unfortunately fail the class and will need to recover. It'll either be taking it over by way of summer school, and then we'll need to expand our offerings. And what I'm going to suggest is, as we enter a new school, we redesign some things. And one of the things that I want to have available for students is more supports after the regular school day. Okay, now knowing that the world opens up and kids go to work and kids play sports and everything else, but I think that if we had opportunities for students, particularly now that we've innovated the online world and we're getting good at that, I think there are different ways to still keep the kid in that mode of recovering credit when they need to, but without disrupting the program of studies or the offerings that we have. Because I think the more that we schedule for these kinds of courses, we're taking away from opportunities at the core to either keep class sizes a little lower or to have more targeted interventions for kids.
Yeah, I don't disagree. My concern was just that I know in the past we talked about overage undercredited kids, let's say, they come
Sure.
to the high school,
Sure.
they need to take the regular stuff, but also have some other options for, it sounds like you're saying there'll still be those options.
Yes.
But what I was concerned about is if we take it out totally, like at some point there has to be some sort of recognition that there'll be opportunities for kids to do a credit recovery class through Edgenuity or something ahead after school, whatever it is. I think you have a plan for it, but when you said it's eliminated, basically all credit recovery is eliminated from
I
the
think
course of studies, I don't know if that's,
I think that what
I
we
think-
said was support was gonna happen.
I think the way I see it is we're offering it as more of a service and support rather than a course. So you failed English 1, okay, we need to help you. And you need that credit to graduate. And here are menus of options that you could engage in to get there, It's the traditional
but I'm
summer
saying, where
school.
would those be, would be my question, that's all. Is there a section, like in guidance, that says, on an individual basis, we're gonna work with or something, some recognition of where would that happen?
Okay, so soon I'm gonna be coming to you with some ideas about redesign. And in there, you'll see what I'm talking about. I don't, if we plan for failure in a program of studies, then that safety valve is gonna be right in people's faces. And perhaps it's a little bit of a demotivating factor for some kids, knowing that, well, if I fail it, there's that course I can take right there to replace it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, I'm just, you know my concern, and I think you're saying the same thing as I am hearing you, and that's basically what you said last year, we would do different options and all that stuff, when you said it was just eliminated, that would be my only concern, but I'm sure as more things come forward, we'll be able to judge, so I think you did a nice presentation, thank you to everyone,
Thank you.
good job.
Mr. Corey?
Yes, I do have a couple more questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Damaris, when you were in your opening statements about the program of studies in general, one of your statements was you've designed pathways to help get kids there. Expound on that.
So part of what I was referring to would be the pre-AP pathway, right? So we want to get students to the highest level that they can before they graduate from this, right? And so by retooling our honors program to embed the AP skills, we're gonna have more students in AP classes, not only more students in classes, but more successful. And when we talk about how we lay out the program of studies, some of it was designed to not be inclusive, okay? If you notice that there's not a section that says special education, okay? Because special education is a service provided to students.
That's right.
And their IEP would place them in a specialized setting
That's right.
to receive the curriculum that's expected in, say, every English class, right? So that's what I meant when I talked about pathways to success for students.
As far as CTE, can I ask Mr. Medeiros? Oh, no, basically, let me ask the principal. Mr. Damaris, as far as CTE programming, we have really great amount of pathways in that overall umbrella right now that have been developed through the years. I'm very pleased to see that because I think it befits our demographic population here in Fall River very well, and that we can turn kids onto real life skills so they could achieve some success after high school. So important. Do you see room, given our brand new high school facility and the amount of programs that are in CTE overall, is there still room for growth and adaptation into the future as maybe possibly some new trends open up?
I think that, we're always looking to be responsive to the labor market and to new trends. I think we have a very solid foundation to build on right now with several of the programs being new and some of them almost embryonic when you talk about marketing, and we'd really like to see the engineering pathway really get bolstered too. The immediate opportunity for growth that I see is to expand Durfee's operations from a 6 to 8 hour day to more of a 12-hour day or more by way of the CT after dark. And right now we're piloting it with a couple of shops, but I think over time we're gonna mushroom that out to include culinary and nursing and childcare and basically all of our offerings, so
That's really helping a kid to, that's hands-on, that's like experience, that's stuff that they could add to their resume, that's stuff that they could say, hey, job world, I'm ready for you. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about moving forward, especially with the new school opening up.
I
Really
agree.
excited about it.
And taking that concept of what you're talking about hands-on, I want to push that across departments. More project-based learning for everyone in all content, so that there's synthesis going on and applicability to real-world scenarios. That's where the learning sticks.
Absolutely. So it's along that line, and Project Lead the Way. If I could ask, well, I know Jen, you had you had an extraction today. Is Project Lead the Way? I've seen the middle school programs, and they're very, very exciting to see a 7th and 8th grade kid, doing some of the research work they're doing in their Project Lead the Way classrooms. But I haven't seen the high school program. Is it active at the high school, Jen?
It is, but so kids don't know a lot of the biomedical pathways that we have, so part of my work is to expand and give kids entering Durfee as many opportunities as possible in the sciences. So for instance, if we see a freshman taking if they know they're interested in the best way, they can jump right into one of the Project Lead the Way for biomedicals from the top 1 year. So my open up a support and to give
I wish I
students
could understand that.
more different paths of science than they've had before.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can just expand on that a little bit. There's two things we're doing to expand students' kind of transition from middle school to high school to support Project Lead the Way. The first is doing a better job in the 8th grade year, marketing to students about what the different pathways and programs are at Durfee High School. The second is we wanted to run it this year, however, due to the pandemic, we shifted to run it next year for the first time. Called a STEM discovery pathway, and in that pathway for freshmen, students can explore computer science, environmental sustainability, biomedical, and engineering. And they go through a 2 or 3 week rotation, getting some information, and then they can choose which pathway that they're most interested in, take the level 1 course right in freshman year, and that'll give them an opportunity, to continue on in the pathway as they move towards graduation.
Thank you, Drew. That was great. Thank you, Jen. Very exciting, Mr. Damaris. I think the future looks great for Durfee High School. I'm very excited about it. I yield, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Corey. Superintendent Malone, you want to join us?
I want to add 2 things. One, to school committee member Aguirre's point, at a future meeting, there will be more discussion about alternative pathways and pathways in general, and work that we're doing to get at so that every kid graduates through this model. If we think differently about credit recovery and more about competencies and meeting the requirements to standards. So we're going to have that discussion probably within the next 2 months. Also, as this budget season, there will be another place where you will hear specific investments that we want to make, both at Durfee and at RPA, and at the middle level, getting at the CVTE. You talked about growth. As you know, when we designed the building, in 2016 we only had 5 vocational programs, we now have 9. When we designed the high school, we could only build it per the MSBA guidelines. It can only be designed by how many programs we actually have approved. So that's why we got 4 approved in a short period of time. We have 9. What we are looking to do, as Matt said, some of these programs are gonna take off because they are so new in terms of what is the future of marketing. It may not need the space that it currently has, so that could be done different, right? But what we're looking at is pushing down CBTE. So in last year's budget,
Yeah.
we really brought forward to roll out the construction craft program at Talbot.
Yeah.
Coming back at the committee with that this year, given that there's likely some money from the Student Opportunity Act. And that is an example. Another one that we also, as Matt mentioned, is look at the hours. So if we look at Durfee, is no longer a 8-hour day operation, but you look at it like 12 to 16-hour day operation, if you will. We want to do second shift with our most popular program, which is the cosmetology. We can only serve, I think, 30 kids at once because of the numbers, but if we could add second shift, there's 60 kids. Now, these are examples of how we're going to continue to grow. And what Matt mentioned about the SAT scores being lower, what we're really trying to figure out is how do we improve the achievement of the bottom 25% of all kids, right? So our AP scores are great. We're doing great work there. But we are pushing more and more kids to get the SAT scores. So if these kids haven't had rigorous experiences, or perhaps there's gaps in learning or needs, how do we make sure that 9th and 10th grade, and then the push in the 11th grade really gets those kids prepared and ready? So we're gonna have more discussions. This is the first one on program of study. We have a timeline upstairs, budget hearing on the 22nd, subcommittee meeting set up, and more information. So we plan to share a lot of information with the committee as we continue to move forward. And I agree with you. I think the team at Durfee is focused on the right work. I think there's been definitely a shift. It's palpable in terms of us really talking about what's important there, that equity piece, to make sure that we have access for all kids, and we're pushing a rigorous curriculum, and really trying to also be creative and have fun with the content stuff that we do. So I think it's going to be a great transition year as we go into the new building, and we'll continue to share information. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Malone. Mr. Damaris, thank you.
One more question, sorry.
Sure.
Just a question on the pre-AP question again. So at Durfee High, would there only be two levels, so you're either in pre-AP or in college prep? That's it? Is that accurate? Or just
Well, there's AP, right? It says AP.
No, I mean, like I was looking
So
at
entry
9
point
and
at a
10,
freshman?
you know, like
Yes.
9th
Yes.
graders, 10th graders.
Yes.
Your choices are pre-AP or college prep.
And so, with an asterisk, right, in that not all contents are tethered to an AP test, for example, so it might be honors. You might say, you see honors Portuguese, for example, because there's no AP Portuguese.
Right, so
you
at
know.
the same time, it's honors, in that question would be honors or college prep?
Yes, yes,
Two levels.
yes.
Thank you, I go.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Thank you, Mr. Damaris. I want to thank you and all of your department heads. Over the years, seen many iterations of programs of studies, and so I want to thank your department heads for always thinking about what the needs are of the students, changing with the times, if you will, thinking ahead of what interests are out there and trying to draw more students into it. I like the focus, the credit recovery piece. I am concerned about those students, but you're right. I think if we advertise that coming through the door, you can choose a class, almost immediately, indicates we're more focused on your stumblings than we are about, where we want those students to be. So, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your department heads for staying with us. I know it's been a long day for all of you, but thank you. I'll entertain a motion to refer the BMC Durfee High School 2021-2022 Program of Studies
So
to the
moved.
full committee.
Second.
Made by Mr. Corey, seconded by Mr. Aguirre. Gentlemen, any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, Madam Secretary.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Costa?
Yes,
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
motion's been approved and forwarded. Thank you all. The second topic of discussion for today's agenda is the reproductive health curriculum. Welcome.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I think before I talk about the proposal that I'm going to bring forth, I think it's important to kind of frame it how I got here. So, previous to my coming on board, which was 5 years ago, we had nurses that were health educators that used to go to the schools and do the puberty lessons and talk about body changes. And that was when we had the small neighborhood schools. And then the bigger schools were built and some of the positions were cut and they were no longer going out to the schools. And in that time frame after that, nobody was able to really say what time frame. It was that we were no longer going to do any puberty lessons or any type of reproductive health in the middle level or at the elementary school. So when I came on board, which was 5 years ago, my first year, when I came here, at Durfee, we had a Health 1 and a Health 2 program, and in that program, they taught reproductive health. And then at the Cuss and Morton, they had their own resources. They still had a health program that they kind of pieced together, but they did not teach reproductive health. So my first year here, we were able to, through Dr. Malone had put me in charge of making sure that we put the life skills health program into the middle school. And that was when the state was requiring all schools to have a substance prevention program. But it was great because now we could take all those pieces of the health program and meld them together. So at that point, we trained all the teachers and we rolled that out the second year. In that second year, I was awarded a grant through South Coast, and I wrote that grant to bring health to grades 3 and 5. At that time, we bought the materials and did the train the trainer model and train the teachers to teach health. So at that point, we piloted that at Laterno and Tansy, and we trained all our PE teachers. And that fourth year, all elementary teachers were teaching health from 3 to 8. Fonseca does have a wellness teacher, and Henry Lord does have a K to 8 health teacher. So here we are in the fifth year. So last year, I had hoped to come forward, but of course, COVID interrupted those plans. So I bring forth to you this proposal of a reproductive health lessons in grades 6 to 8 and puberty lessons in grade 5 for the 2021-22 school year, providing an evidence-based sexual health education that can improve academic success, prevent dating violence and bullying, help youth develop healthy relationships, delay sexual orientation, and reduce unplanned pregnancy, HIV, and other STIs, and reduce sexual health disparities among our LGBTQ youth. So as you have a document in front of you, I had given you the information about the program that I was looking at. I did go through 4 different programs and vetted those out. Part of my association in the state is with about 75 wellness directors in the state, and we meet weekly and monthly, and we talked about the different curriculum. So I was able to get a lot of data from the other districts to find out what was working and what wasn't. The curriculums that we looked at were respect and responsibility, and we looked at the great body, and then now this one that I'm bringing forth, which is our Get Real program. Get Real program is a 3-year middle school curriculum. It's for grades 6 to 8.
What was that again?
It's a Get Real program.
Get Real.
Yep. Let me give you a copy just want to say how that. And it is a 3-year, and it's 9 lessons per year. It's 30 to 45 minutes, so it could be able to be added into our health curriculum. 7 hours of instruction each year, and it's 27 lessons over the 3 years. And I talked about that it would go into the curriculum there. Talked a little bit about what that cost would be to buy the kits for the teachers. Honestly, the most important piece, and I don't have a quote for that, I'm waiting for that, is the training. This is such a important piece that I really want to make sure that our teachers are prepared and ready to teach this. I don't want to leave them out hanging and not have that support to make sure that they feel comfortable delivering the curriculum. In saying that, you talk about having a comprehensive program. And a program would be age-appropriate, medically accurate information on a broad set of topics related to sexuality, including human development, relationships, decision-making, conception, and also disease prevention. Part of that that's not listed in the comprehension and what this program brings, and it also talks about sexual orientation, gender identity, social, racial, trauma-informed, reproductive justice, and long-term consequences of stigma, discrimination, medical technology, and the emergence of digital technology as a growing impact of social and sexual explicit media on relationships. So as you had talked about earlier, kind of changing with the times, kind of what we're doing with our health program at the high school, we're looking at what is it that we need these kids to learn and have those skills that they can be successful in life? What is it that we want them to leave us with? And so with this program here, the average age of children that are having, that are going through puberty, for girls it's 9 to 12, so it's about the 10 is the average age, and for boys it's 9 to 14, and that's in our 5th grade. So I feel it's very, very important that students have this information so that they can make the best choices for themselves and be healthy and be in healthy relationships and be able to understand and recognize what isn't a healthy relationship and how that all impacts their growth. And that brings to the second part of this is Procter & Gamble. This is a very popular program that's used in a lot of schools. It is the puberty lesson. It's designed just for 5th grade. It's 3 days of puberty lessons. It would be taught by the health and phys ed teachers. It does have 4 modules. One is growth and development of puberty, girls and boys' reproductive system, stay confident and healthy, and then healthy relationships. And that builds into what we already teach in our curriculum for our life skills. We already talk about making decisions, media influences, coping with anxiety, coping with anger, communication skills, social skills, assertiveness, and resolving conflict. So it's an easy, seamless blend in. I don't want to make it, oh, this is this time, like very, out there. I want it to be natural and that people feel comfortable. And we also want to make sure that it's inclusive and that everybody feels part of the conversation and not left out because, well, that's not me, or I don't recognize that. So this is why I came forward, and I'm hoping that we may be able, I start the conversation to start to look at how we can have a program that would meet the needs of our students.
Thank you. Any questions, John? Cory?
I do. As far as any of this is concerned, Michelle, family, is there a family, are all families gonna be apprised that their young child is gonna be studying such material?
Yes, the program for Get Real, at every single unit is a letter that goes home with the parents to tell them exactly what the units are and what they're gonna be talking about. A big piece of what I liked about the Get Real, and a lot of parents don't have that comfort level to have these conversations with their children, or it just doesn't go as well as they would hope. So with this here, we always recognize that the first educator of our children are the parents. And so in doing that, we don't want to take their role out because they are the most important role, where we want to be able to support them so they can have these conversations with their children.
Do these curriculums, does this curriculum invite parents into the classroom perhaps for a presentation or project or assembly or whatever?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because I have down here that one of the things that we talked about and that I feel is very important is having parents at sexual educative workshops, the nights and days, presenting the curriculum to the family. So I think that leading off with workshops and being able to bring that information out is very important because I think as soon as people hear that word, it's like, oh, they're gonna, what is that? What are they doing there? And I want everybody, it's nothing to hide, I want it to be as natural as possible and that people feel comfortable. Now, in saying that, there's a state law that, of course, gives the permission for parents, and you have also a policy here in the Fall River, that if a parent wants to opt their child out, they can opt their child out. What we do in the high school is, we had in the past, and it's one of the policy that we have in place, and I was hoping down the road we might kind of be able to amend it, is that we have letters that we send out to the parents, but what happens is that the policy reads that we have to get a signature to get it back, and if we don't get it back and the child doesn't participate, well, sometimes the kids get together and kind of plot out that they're not going to get it signed and they're going to be in a study hall together and whatnot. And we end up with a large group of students that really need to be there, but because, somebody at home wasn't able to sign it or whatnot, we weren't able to have them there. So we more would rather have sign home the letter, as we always do, have parents sign off on it, but if we don't get anything back, it's just like when we do surveys, we send it out. If you don't send anything back telling us you don't want to participate, then, your child takes a survey. We'd like to do that the same thing because it would make it so much easier and for the students that, need to find somebody to sign off on it and understanding of that, and then also so that we make sure that all the children that should be in there are there, so.
Let me ask you, just person to person, all the research aside, do you feel comfortable forwarding you know, this type of curriculum, especially like to fifth graders, third graders, fourth graders?
Yes, I do. I would, be very
Could
comfortable
we,
with that.
at some point in the future, visit a classroom where it's being taught or discussed?
Absolutely.
Is that being done now?
No, because it's only at the high school. So the first
Okay.
time they have any reproductive health is in ninth grade. And by then, we're way beyond, like, the puberty. We didn't talk about
Right.
it. And, you know, I'll be honest, we've had some students that didn't understand what was happening to them and be crying and thought they were dying.
Sure.
And I just feel that that's really important, that they understand about, you know, body changes and that it's normal and it's okay. And they're not hurt.
Yeah, identity, I mean, identity is a huge part of the growth and development of our psyches anyway, you know, so I know that there's a lot of issues surrounding that as a child grows and develops. The nature of this is it's really sound because social media controls so much of their ignorance and their false point of view as they try to develop through it. So it's important to have a counterpunch and a healthy one at that. I want to make sure that families, moms and dads, really have a strong handle on what's going on because it is discussions of a sensitive nature, you know, and I know that I'd want my own child to be as protected as possible as they grow and develop.
Absolutely. I have a daughter who's in the 5th grade, so she's right at that age. And so the school does have a program where they do take the boys and the girls and they have that puberty talk, but I got ahead of the game because I had all the resources, so I was ready.
Surely.
But a lot of parents don't have that, and they don't have that comfort level, and it is a sensitive subject. And especially if there's a student that's kind of struggling with where they fit into that. Where do they identify? Where is their comfort level?
Yes.
And so I think that it's, you know, a lot of times when they would talk about different issues with sexuality, the kids are left out, and they felt like, this doesn't apply to me, and nobody understands me. So that further isolates them from the conversation. And then for some of them, I want them to hear about a normal, what it is about having a healthy sexual outlook on life, because I don't want them to think that what they're doing is wrong or that they don't belong and that it's fine. You know, that they are who they are and that they identify as they do. And I think that it's important that we're making sure we're using the right language and that we're being sensitive and inclusive with all our students. But I would agree, I would understand that my daughter, when she had that program, I wanted to know about it. I wanted to know what was in it. When we rolled out the substance prevention program, there were people that were concerned about that. And we had people that came to the school and I was able to give them the scope and sequence, just like I gave you for this one here. It tells every unit what's being taught, and parents would have access to that, no problem.
Will this take root in September?
I would like that, but I'm bringing that to you first as a discussion piece.
So we're coming here and we're asking, would you refer this, or should we go and have a larger discussion with everyone in the committee first, since this is a curriculum adoption? So.
This is the first step.
So I
Great,
would.
okay.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
As you know, I've been talking about this for years. When I got here, because I didn't understand why we weren't doing what every other school system in Massachusetts was doing on this very important subject. So when last year we were gonna come forward to the committee, we were planning.
Yes, we had it all set.
Boom, and we went to COVID lockdown. This is very important shift for us. So the plan was we're gonna get it off the ground last year. We didn't. So we're coming to the subcommittee first to share what are the programs, and then look at some point to get to the full committee approval to adopt and purchase the materials that we need to.
And we had 3 curriculums that were, the top 3 that we had. So I could certainly give you links and so that you could see the other 2 curriculums to see the difference between and how we kind of vetted that out.
I trust your vetting process. I know what programs like this generally look like. I know what these curriculums are. They're developed by consultants and experts in the field. I understand that. I trust your vetting process. I'm getting more into the explicit nature of the curriculum
Yes.
itself
Yeah.
and how it may affect a third grader or a fifth grader
Mhm.
and their family discussions. Kids that age don't really know how to discuss things very well. They process information still, but they're not really, I don't know if this is gonna get them to maybe more openly discuss
Mhm.
situations, I don't know.
That was
But
a- that
I'd be
was a
very
big
curious
part
to look at that.
of wanting to have that health curriculum at the elementary school because of that. Because when we have that health curriculum, we're talking about relationships, we're talking about communication. How do you, have a conversation with somebody? What do you do when you're angry? What do you do when you're stressed out?
Surely.
How do you handle your emotions? And now, in this day and age of what's happening, the kids need that even more than they ever did, that SEL piece of that wraparound service for those students. So I definitely, I hear exactly what you're saying, because that, is always a concern, is how a kid's gonna take that. And that's why that training for the teachers needs to be what it, it needs to be very specific, because this is a sensitive subject. It's the same thing when we taught we're teaching the health curriculum. We talk about substance abuse. That triggers some students. That's upsetting to some students. So we've already got a plan in place. If we start to see a student reacting, or we have that background information about the student, we may, decide that maybe this isn't the lesson that the student needs to be in. Maybe it's a conversation we have with the guidance and whatnot. Or we have somebody right on, ready to go, if that person needs support. So that's important.
What I'd like to see, Mr. Superintendent, is if there's any data from these type of curriculums in other districts throughout our Commonwealth, then I wouldn't mind seeing what their reactions are to these curriculums, like anything that's going on elsewhere in the state.
I can provide that for you.
Yeah,
Sure.
if we could do that and put the links in, and I'll include that in my email on a Friday. It doesn't have to be this Friday, but.
Yep, I can get that. We keep a document where everybody puts in their programming and how it, is going, and that's how I was able to get a lot of support to find the different programs. I wanted to make sure it was appropriate.
Yeah, because we deal with different cultural pockets in different pockets of the state, so I mean, there's a lot of cultural issues that'll be discussed as well, and want to make sure that we're taking a step in the right direction. I think we are. I think it will develop a child's cognitive abilities to fight off the temptations of pop culture around them, because pop culture is an incredibly strong force in a child's life, and they need to be able to balance that with some cognition. So hopefully we're heading in the right direction. Thank you, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Forrest.
So, just, I'm not sure if I missed it, but you're reading from a paper, but is there a summary of what you were, to go along with this, or was it just, so I got this one,
Yes, you have
This
that one.
and then like a 37-page thing?
Yep, and then I have, I also brought with me, just so you would have it, I think you already have that one and this one. This is the organization of one of the programs, so you can see how it is set up and how it's to be taught. I do have I wanted to make it, I didn't want to overload you with too much, but I can certainly give you the write-up that I have from that. This here is just for me for bullet points to make sure that.
Yeah, the only thing I would suggest to you, to everybody, when we get presented something, knowing the history, the background, and a sort of, I always like to say, a one-pager
Mhm.
is always helpful to know the background of why it's coming before us. I think you both explained some of that, but if
Yeah.
it comes in a one-pager, so when it comes to the full committee, it would make more sense if everybody knew going in where
Mhm.
this is coming from, rather than having to hear it for the first time, just a suggestion.
Okay, thank
My
you.
other thought was, what are the current, so this is for middle school,
Middle school and the 5th grade program for puberty.
so what do the middle school principals say? Have they been apprised of this? Are they on board with it? Have they been talked to?
I will not say that I've had conversations with them as a whole. I've had individual conversations, not as a whole middle school group. It is something that I can tell you that the teachers are kind of stirred around a lot, because the kids are asking a lot of questions and they're kind of dancing because they know they're not supposed to be discussing this, so it gets a little awkward in that regard. I've had some principals ask me, "Are you gonna do that puberty lesson? Is somebody gonna come in? Are we gonna, talk to the kids?" So, but as a whole group of polling them, no.
Yeah, and that's just another suggestion I would make before it comes to the full committee.
Mhm.
I think it's important, everything you said, I think it needs to go to the full committee for a larger discussion, but I for one would like to hear what the people that are in the buildings that are gonna be running this program, other programs, what they currently have, you know.
Yes,
I think getting the buy-in from those folks, to me, makes a lot of sense when I vote to say that they're,
absolutely.
you know, they're on board, yeah, we agree, this is the good, you know, it
Right.
just makes it a lot smoother that this is the
Absolutely.
way we're going rather than just wondering, so if you can,
No,
between now and
and I
then.
agree with that, because if you don't have that buy-in, then it's not done with fidelity, and so then you're not really doing it.
Well, who's gonna do it? Like, there's always, not every school's exactly the same, so
Exactly.
what teacher's gonna do it, who's gonna, you know, so those are some questions that, the nuts and bolts that they have that we don't necessarily know,
Mm-hmm.
and I just wanna get to the point of,
Mr. Aguirre, what we could put together is both teachers and administrators at the middle level in the 5th grade about their understanding of it, what their feelings are in terms of want and need, and then the nuts and bolts of how they operate. We'll get something together, and we'll have all that prior to a larger discussion for all the members.
yeah, thank you, I think it makes sense, so, with that, I yield, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Aguirre. Thank you, Ms. Sharp. You know, I will say this, just a couple things. One, you know, the policy referenced earlier,
Mm-hmm.
although I can see how it may hinder students' participation, I'm also a big proponent of parent approval.
Oh, yes,
So,
I would
can tell
agree.
you that, you know, and I, you know, heard you loud and clear, and I respect, you know, your thoughts about the committee revisiting, changing the policy.
Mhm.
And that may come before us, but I can tell you I won't support that. I didn't support it when it came before us, when we adopted the policy many years ago. I think I'm a pretty open-minded person. I have 3 children, well, a 22-year-old, so I don't consider her a child, a 16-year-old and a 15-year-old. So I've been through this stage, or these stages. They're not difficult, they're not easy, they're very difficult. But I also felt as a parent that I should have some say in my son or daughter's exposure to these conversations. And so I think that's where the policy connects with parents. You know, I could see it cutting the other way. You know, you mentioned that kids get together and they don't bring them home so they can go into a
Right.
cafeteria or a study. Well, I can also see kids getting put into class and taught about this and discussing it at the dinner table or around the house, and having parents saying, hey, wait a minute, where'd that parental slip go? How did I miss that one? And so I think you can cut both ways. So this is a topic that, you know, I think is long overdue in our schools, because I think many of our students don't have the adults in their lives to talk to about, you know, this very scary time in their lives where their bodies change and they're not really sure why and they're not in control of it. But I also think that you know, parents need to be, or guardians need to be a part of that decision for various reasons, whether it's cultural, whether it's religious. I mean, there's gonna be all types of reasons why parents are gonna wanna say, yes, please have these conversations in this curriculum, you know, discussions with my son or daughter, or no, I'm not interested in them participating. So, I'd be willing to hear more about it, but, you know, that's just my thought off the top of my head. You know, and again, I'm one who considers myself pretty open when it comes to sexuality and acceptance of people's gender identities and how they identify themselves. And I just think that that may differ from the general public and parents, and I want them to feel comfortable before they sign off and have their sons or daughters participate in this curriculum.
I can understand that. We talked about that lot, and we did come up with like kind of a faux, what it would look like, you know, how we would explain it. And basically it was that you would have to either send back the slip, or you would be either to an email, a call, you know, and they would be exempt. We wouldn't have a child, that we wouldn't have any
Because I think
information.
this day and age, I mean, actually these backpack forms that, you know, those are sort of non-existent for most. I mean, it's an email that we correspond with, or some
Right.
other way of communicating, or somewhere online. So, you know, I would support that type of change.
Yeah,
that if you
that's
get it
kind of
back
what
in that
we
manner,
wanted
but
to do.
it's simply, well, we gave it to you and we didn't get it back, so we just taught it
No.
anyway.
I'm sorry if I gave that
No,
impression.
it just to me sounded like, you know, there's an opportunity for students to play it the other way. My mother and father never signed this, so I'm not bringing it home, and then now they're taught the information,
Right.
they go back and talk about it. parents say, where's that form? I say, well, I don't know, I didn't get one.
And I think you're gonna see more of that at the high school level,
Right.
where at the middle school, you know, they're gonna know, okay, they have health, and this is, you know, this letter came home, and so there's gonna be that closer connection, where at the high school, we have numerous classes coming through, so there's more of that gray area there.
And I think sometimes these conversations taking place in classrooms like that, you know, you know, this can be a very, silly time for kids. They hear words they're not accustomed to hearing, and that discussion, and so to feel comfortable to be able to do that in that setting, you know, has some advantages as well. But the other piece that I have, and maybe it just needs further discussion, I don't know that I would even ask for a motion to refer at this point, because I think there's still some information that's needed, but particularly the piece that Mr. Aguirre mentioned about the buy-in from the middle school principals, and how this would fit into their particular school improvement plans, and I always hear this competition for time, and, you know, I don't have time to do those other ancillary types of classes because we're so focused, or our plan says we have to improve our test scores in math, and so, you know, even teachers feel sometimes that they're up against it, to give up that valuable time on learning for the core subjects, and this is just as important, in my opinion. But those are the conversations I hear sometimes about teachers that, well, how else do you want us to fit this in? I know it's health, but we also gotta do all these other benchmarks we gotta meet. And so I'd be interested to hear from principals as to how they plan on sort of managing this curriculum, and how they plan to roll it out throughout the course of the year. And then just, you know, I know you mentioned in reference to some, sounds like some real in-depth research on programs, but just, you know, cost estimates, you know, if we're gonna purchase it, if we're gonna just, if this is gonna be sort of a train-the-trainer, if it's gonna be a one-time expenditure where we're hoping to build capacity amongst our own staff, so that we don't have to go back and sort of with a reoccurring expense, but just some of those things I think would be helpful. And then I think, you know, I'd like to see a decision made one way or the other, so that we can get it off the ground and running by September. I wouldn't wanna see another academic year go by where we're not having some variation, if not the whole curriculum is presented, but at least some of the topics that we've discussed here in our classrooms being taught to our students, so that they have a better understanding. But I think I can speak just for myself, not my colleagues, but, you know, I think it's long overdue, quite frankly. And it sounds like there are other school districts that are far ahead of the curve when it comes to this type of education. And, you know, I think it's something that's very well needed. But thank you. Mr. Superintendent Malone, and then Mr. Ponce.
Oh,
You go, if you got some.
yeah, I was just gonna say, this is a very sensitive subject, and I think that some parents will perceive it as that. Just wondering if it's something that we could have some community forums or meetings where we could invite parents in, so that we could kind of share the information, so that parents are comfortable with exactly what is being taught, why it's being taught, and how, because I think that people hear the word and they think, you know, oh, they only isolate one word, and they think, oh, they're gonna teach them sex ed, but they're not really comfortable with that, with the subject of the nature, of that nature. So I think that having meetings, communicating with families, being open in different languages, and making sure that parents are well aware of exactly what it is and why it's important for us to teach it, will kind of break down some of those barriers.
I think you're gonna get some families are gonna say, thank you, please, thank you, I'm glad I don't have to have that conversation. And then there are gonna be other families that say, absolutely not, that's a very private conversation, and I don't want my son or daughter exposed to those conversations, and I wanna have that conversation in the confines of my home, you know, where that, you know, that safety net, if you will, or that relationship with their sons or daughters is there. And so it is something I think we're gonna need to vet a little bit further before we get to a final decision on it. Superintendent Malone?
I just, a process point, I would ask the subcommittee, would it be appropriate for the subcommittee to further, for discussion of a first read with the full committee, or do you want to come back to this group at another time?
I'd like it to come back to this group with additional information
Mhm.
first, and then,
Because they could do it either way. So it would make sense then to come back,
right,
probably not, it won't happen until sometime in March or April, that we would come back with this group, and there'll probably be some other items that we have on the instructional subcommittee at that time. And at that point, we would have a whole bunch of other information for the committee.
I just don't wanna rush it. And
No,
then
we
get
don't-
it to the
well, we don't
full
need to
committee
rush
And then have it get shot down, or have it
We
get
don't need
referred
to
back
rush it.
here because people have additional questions or
Yeah.
information that's needed, and we end up back here anyway. I don't, it's not something that I think it needs action here in January, early
No.
February. I think it's something that we could, Ms. Sharp has done her diligence on this, she's got a lot of information. I think the last piece was, cost projections in terms of how we plan on rolling it out. How principals at the middle school levels and at least fifth grade plan on sort of implementing it into their academic calendars. I think once we have that information, it sounds like, at that point, I think we're in a better position to put
Yeah,
something.
so I mean, just something, to me, makes a lot of sense not to go to the full committee now for discussion, or even if it's first read, second read, third read, to come back to this group, but it would be at a time when we have more information, backed up with a couple of the other things that we know we have to share with this committee. So that would be the form to do it. We'll be ready, budget, we're doing the budget presentations, budget presentation, the big one on February 22nd. We're tight until then, we can share some stuff, but it'll probably be March where we can get back with this group.
That's fine.
Just
Second?
on that same thought, the issue of the signing opt-in, opt-out piece,
Yeah,
I think that one thing you should look at is the data around the state and other districts that have been successful, because we all might feel one way, but if we say, if we do it this way, we get 50% of the kids, whatever the data shows,
right.
it might be a good selling point to say why we should consider it one way or the other. I wasn't on the committee at the time to take those other votes, but if you give data that says, this is why it's needed here, and this is why it's successful under this condition, but if we make them have to sign, the number goes way down, now it's a value judgment amongst
Right.
us.
And what we would,
Something like that, I'd
what we
appreciate it.
would do at that time down the road, when we had all that information, was that would all be part of the school committee's deliberation. So the policy would be part of that and how we do it. And Mark, I think we're all on the same page. There's gotta be a permission. It's just how that happens, and that's what Kevin's saying.
But there
It
is
can't
that
just
big
be,
piece that you have to
we
get
do
that.
this.
And I would say too, is that I've kept the data at the high school level, that how many students opted out and how many we had out of the class, and I kept a spreadsheet of that, so I can provide that. Just to give, that's a high school, but I can at least
Yep.
give that piece of data. And then,
Thank
of course,
And
yeah.
I could tell you the curriculum that we were teaching, that we have been over the years teaching, is nowhere near as in-depth as what I've seen here. And there was already some pushback from parents
Right.
that didn't want their
Right.
their
And
sons
and that's a
daughters
parent
part
right.
of that, a part of that conversation and that curriculum, let alone this. And so, times have changed, and so we'll see. I just wanna recognize the fact that, as a parent,
It's controversial, I get it.
this
Yeah.
is, this
Yeah.
is one of those that you gotta make sure that, and I'm not saying we have to have 100% buy-in, but we have to have enough buy-in to feel as comfortable in making.
And
the
also
decision.
buy out, so you don't have to
And
do it if
opt out.
that's, right.
Mhm.
Mr. Corey?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the group work being done in our schools right now, and also in the agencies throughout the city, they're always talking about, the safety of a child and relationship issues. The Katie Brown Foundation, they talk about healthy relationships. I know a lot of our adjustment counselors are running groups, especially at the secondary level, where a lot of that discussion is about healthy relationships and responsibilities. And I've had a lot of intersecting work with Planned Parenthood here in the city, where we had their guests come on in and do active discussions with our group at the time, especially around sex and the practice of it and all of that. It was very, very healthy. There's no doubt in my mind that this is gonna get carried out in a very productive way. But it is a sensitive topic, all about the growth and development of a child in American society in the 21st century again, with social media and all of that. And so I really like the questions that my colleagues have asked today. This was a great presentation on your part. So let's continue to talk about it, and we'll all grow together, you know, and see how this concept unfolds.
Motion to table?
I yield.
Sure, there's a motion before the subcommittee to table it. Is there a second?
Second?
Second. No discussion on the motion to table. Roll call?
Mr. Agia?
Yes.
Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
So the item will remain on the table, and then at such time that you feel there's enough information to bring back, we'll lift it from the table and continue to discuss it.
Well, thank you very much for
Thank
giving
you.
me the opportunity to
Appreciate it.
bring it forward. That's
Oh, thank you
the
for all your
first
hard
step
work.
was to have that conversation and then take
Yep.
it from there.
And I appreciate all your work. I know you've
Thank you.
Fellow school committee member.
I know that. She's working really hard.
I know, I just realized I had my badge because I have it on both sides so I can get into the building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any new business to come before the committee? Mr. Aguirre?
Just a question on, is X2 remaining in the district? Are we looking to get rid of X2, or we?
Well, we are exploring other options for student information system. We are looking at potentials. It wouldn't be for this year because that's a long process, but we are exploring other options.
And is there like a rationale for that? Like, what is X2?
Yeah, X2's awful.
Antiquated. It's we're having a lot of issues with customer service, and I think that we're looking at a system that could provide us with data management, student information, that could bring all those
Different languages.
yeah.
We've looked at like 4 different programs as opportunities. This isn't for next year.
So, hold on, we're not gonna go too far into this.
No,
because it's not
right.
really
We're gonna be bringing
news.
forward to the committee as part of the
Correct.
budget process.
So the answer is eventually.
We're exploring.
but
Yeah,
you
and the
wanna
reason why I
discuss
brought it up
further.
was because I heard about it today, and I just was curious if that was happening. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
It was in.
Yep, we're
Long-term
exploring.
strategy is we would make a shift in the July of 2022. So we would have X2 for the coming year, training rolling out if the committee agrees. And it's not much of a money issue because it's just one for the other. But X2, when it was sold here, it was one thing, it became something else. So there's other products that are much more productive and easy to manage and use.
Well, I've only heard good things about it myself from people that work in the district. I've worked in the district before. I've only had good experience with it. I've also think that we get a pretty good bargain for what we get with it. So those are my concerns. So as you're looking at other things, money's gonna be an issue. What people in the district feel about it, things like that. So just going forward, those are the things that I'd be concerned about.
We've been working on, like, just looking and exploring. We got a pretty diverse, wide-ranging team looking at options. This one model that is kind of the leader at this point is in about, I don't know, 80 or 90 something districts in Massachusetts. It's been well received, and it's much more functional and, and easier to manipulate, and great customer service and training. And that's really what we're missing right now. X2 is a beast in terms of, there's no support. And it's hard to manage. It was made for a different time and it hasn't progressed.
Yep, I just wanted to raise it. Those are my concerns about it, and I'm sure you'll get more info as we go.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Aguirre. Any other new business? Nope, hearing none. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So,
Moved
second.
by Mr. Aguirre, seconded by Mr. Corey. Secretary?
Mr. Agia?
Yes.
Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.